Okay, so to continue from where I left off, so the relationship at the beginning of a child's life is extremely important. If there is disorganization or difficulty in that first 2 years of life, the child will struggle possibly for the rest of their life because of the lack of bonding, because of the lack of connection that they've felt in their earlier years. It could also affect their relationship with peers, the way they respond to authority, the way they respond to other adults. So all of us has an impact. So it's really important for you to really be cognizant of that relationship and the importance of that early relationship. So maternal deprivation hypothesis, it talks about the fact that a broken attachment can lead to problems with a child, as I said now, problems in relationships, problems to connecting others and into childhood. It could also lead to delinquency and affectionless psychopathy. So it could be things like where the child isn't able to connect, they're unable to feel anything. Maybe a lot of children that have struggles in the early years in attachment, it also it also leads to being teenagers or young adults who struggle with substance abuse, or struggle with abusive relationships, lack of healthy relationships. Not always, please just know this is not always, but the research does show that it's quite prevalent in children with attachment issues. Generally, attachment provides a safe haven for when the child is afraid, so it's a base where they can go to. If they're scared, they call their mommy or their daddy. This is really for them the foundation upon which to build their life. Separation or anxiety or distress serves to draw the attachment figure back to the infant, and so it's a survival mechanism. So this is quite confusing, but often when you see parents with children and they cry when mom goes away, then you think, say, I'm sorry about that. People often say, oh, the child is struggling to disconnect with the parents and they're too connected or whatever the case is. But actually, this is around the child who has a very secure attachment type. The parent usually, and I'm talking about this over here, I know I said I wasn't going to go into detail, but I'm just going to mention a little bit everywhere. Secure attachment, the caregiver reacts quickly and positively to the child's needs, they're responsive to the child's needs, and the child's behavior will be distressed when the caregiver leaves, happy when they come back, they seek comfort from the caregiver because it's a trusting relationship. Insecure, avoidant or ambivalent and disorganized, these you can read it for yourself. But essentially, the point I'm trying to get at is that attachment, the early development for a child affects them for the rest of their life. So a child in your class who may be acting out, or may not be able to, who may not listen to you um, as the teacher or the authoritative figure, it may be because they've struggled with attachment for all of their life. They may not have had good connections at home. Sometimes children have to be adults in the house. They have to take care of siblings. So it's difficult for them to respond to the authority figure in the home, who is you, because they're not used to that in their home. So just a quick little overview of that. I've added this for you here. You'll be talking about this more in educational psychology too. But this, I like this because it talks about what happens in childhood affects the way you are able to respond as an adult. As a child, if you have a secure attachment, you're unhappy, which is evident because you're unhappy when your mom leaves and happy when your mom comes back. In adulthood, this could mean that this could result in you having confidence in relationships. You're willing to ask for help from a partner. You're willing to communicate. You're willing to be there. I'm not going to go through all of this again. I don't want to have these videos go on forever and forever. Remember, these are theories. They are have been proven by research, yes, but it's not always the case. There are many things that impact us as individuals, not just one thing. But attachment theory and attachment styles is really important, and I would say very good for you to research on your own. As part of development, I want you to also remember that parenting styles affect development as well. A very authoritative parent may create who is overly who is sorry who is structured but in a healthy way, allows the kids to learn from their mistakes. This could develop into a child who feels that they are able to do things, that they are confident, that they are loved, that they are valuable. So parenting methods and parenting styles really does impact your child and the way they develop, and the way they think of themselves, the way that they understand who they are in the context of their world. Just a brief little overview, but just a reminder that this has affected development as well. Personality is another domain, and there's a theory that, and I put this here because I think it's a little bit fun. I put this here because we also have to know that birth order may or may not affect your personality. This is not always the case. Please do not take this as the be all and end all, but it is a possibility that you, in terms of where you fall within your family, may have an effect on how you respond or how you act. Lastborns often, if I can talk about in my family, the lastborns in our family, this does ring true for them. They're very social, my younger sister, social, charming, outgoing. I wouldn't say she's uncomplicated, and manipulative in the sense, manipulative, we talk about manipulation within development. The first, they say one of the first skills a child learns is manipulation. Manipulation doesn't necessarily mean it in the way that we think about it, in an unhealthy, horrible way. But manipulation means manipulating our environment. We know when we cry, mom is going to come. That's not necessarily an unhealthy manipulation. That's just doing something to get a response. So I just wanted to clarify that. Attention seeking, I would say yes, self-centered, in terms of thinking about themselves and fun. So this could be something that is true. I'm a firstborn, so I like to read what they say about firstborns. But look at where you are in your family and see if it rings true for you. And remember, sometimes we may not have been born first, but we may be the one that's the firstborn in the home. Perhaps the older sibling doesn't live with you, was never lived with you, so you may take on the role of a firstborn. So have a look at it. It's just fun and interesting information. Social cultural perspective. I know many of you have heard of Vygotsky before, and it talks about language development, that it takes place within the social interactions between individuals. So the more you talk to a baby, the more you talk to a child, the more you talk to each other, the more advanced or easier it is for a child to develop language skills. So even babies, if you read to them, you talk to them, they're hearing it. It's their brain is starting to encode the information. Because the way we learn, and I'm going to talk about this when we talk about the Triune brain later, is that the more we hear something or the more we do something, it becomes hardwired into our brain. It becomes part of our thinking and ability to do things. So talk to little children. It's very important. I'm not going to go into this too much. You may have done this before, but it's very important that we understand that social interactions, the way we speak to our children, the way we treat them, is what they're going to do in their lives. So if we speak to children with compassion, if we speak to them with love and understanding, that is what we're going to see in their development and their process. I shared this on Facebook yesterday that I found from a page on child development, and I think this is something so important for us to remember and to think about, that the more healthy relationships that a child has, the more likely he is to recover from trauma and thrive. Relationships are the agent of change, and the most powerful therapy is human love. Okay, this is the one I actually wanted to show. It relates to what I was saying in the earlier slide. I found this on the Play Therapy website. I think the single most important thing that I learned from research is we cannot give our children what we don't have. If we want our children to have courage, compassion, and connection, we must practice these things in our life. If we want them to love and accept who they are, our job is to love and accept who they are. So why am I sharing this? I'm saying this because when a child comes into your classroom, the behavior that they are displaying in their class may have been what they've seen around them. It may not be who they are. It may be becoming part of who they are, but you can help if you show them or treat them with compassion, love. That is what they will learn is important in life, and what is that they'll start to display. So I just wanted to break away quickly from what we were talking about, because this is also part of development. It's developing them as a human being and as an individual. Okay, so Erikson again. Erikson's stages of development, or psychosocial development, talks about the areas, the way in which a child um, responds to the environment and the way the environment impacts on the child, and then what happens at that stage. So I'm not going to go into detail around this. I think that we have in previous modules talked about Erikson. But what I want you to do is read this, think about each stage, do some research about Erikson, or watch a video. There's some good YouTube videos. Just make sure it's a reputable source, and look at where the children that you are working with, where they are in these areas of development, because it does have an impact on the child's ability to connect with others and ability to connect in the classroom space. Okay, we're now moving to the cognitive domain. I've added here Piaget's stages of development, of cognitive development, that just outlines what happens at each stage and age. It's quite self-explanatory. And so the cognitive domain contains, is about the learning of skills predominantly related to mental processes or the mental thinking. So it's acquisition of knowledge, the way we think about the world, the way we are able to think. That is all included within cognitive development. So if you see here at the stages of development that Piaget has purported, the sensory motor stage, which is from 0 to 2 years old, so that's when children are very much involved in putting things in their mouth, touching things, seeing things, and as the term, the way the term is made up, sensory motor, they use their senses and they use their motor, they use their hands and their feet, that's the motor part, and they're using their senses, and that is how they really learn about the world. And then it will progress to the pre-operational phase, the concrete operational phase, and the formal operation, at which point they become more abstract thinkers and they can think about things in a more abstract way. So this helps us to understand the stages that children go through. So you can't expect a child that is, for example, 2 years old or 7 years old to be more theoretical, hypothetical in their thinking, more abstract in their thinking. They are progressing in a very specific way. This is why we do mathematics in the way that we do. We do first pluses and first positive numbers and then negative numbers, because negative numbers is a more abstract consideration. You can't necessarily start with negative numbers because children don't understand what is -1. I can see one apple, I can feel one apple, but I don't know what is -1 apple or -2 apples. They first need to see the physical thing before you can take it away. That is how across the ages we start developing positive numbers and then we go to negative numbers. Because I always thought, wouldn't it just be easier for us to learn the full number line? This is 0, that's negative numbers, this is positive numbers. But at that beginning age and stage, we aren't able to conceptualize negative numbers. Okay, so just a little bit of an example of how that works. So that is cognitive development. So in terms of cognitive development, I'm going to move on to the next slide here quickly. When we talk about cognitive development, I also want to bring in brain development. And so I'm going to use the Triune brain theory. And so the Triune brain theory says that there are 3 parts to the brain. That is the neocortex, which is right on top, the limbic system, which is in the middle, and then right at the bottom is the reptilian complex or reptilian brain. There are different terms. Some people call it the lizard brain, the reptilian brain, some call it the mammal brain and limbic system. It just depends on the terminology you want to use. As I progress, you're going to understand why I want to explain this. So the reptilian brain, which is the oldest part of the brain. It's where the brainstem and the cerebellum, that's where it's connected. It's involved with flight, and it's called the autopilot. Why? Because it's more responsible for the more basic parts of our existence. So the breathing, even when you don't think about breathing, you're breathing. It's because your reptilian brain is doing that for you. It's involved in arousal and reproduction. So all of those things that are more basal, the more automatic parts of our body, that all comes from this part of the brain. Then we're talking about, if we move on to the mammal brain or the limbic system, this is involved in learning, memory, and emotion. So this part of the brain, if this part of the brain is affected, you could not feel emotion, you could struggle with memory. And so this part of the brain is, and this is more, it's specific types of memory in terms of learning. Then we have the human, what they call the human brain or the neocortex. And this is the newest part of the brain, or it's the one that is more, these parts are older. This is the oldest part of the brain, and then that part, and then this is the newer part of the brain. They also call it the neomammalian brain, or the new mammals, the new part of the brain. It's required for more conscious thought and self-awareness, and it sits on top of the other two. So this part of the brain is more, it's also where you're, like when I talk about the frontal lobe, they're talking about the neocortex, is where your thinking comes from, where your rationalization comes from. Here it says where your language comes from, imagination, consciousness, this part of the brain. So I want to talk about the brain in terms of learning. The video is going to end now, so I'm going to continue with the learning part of the brain in the next one.